shoegaze, a genre of noise. The blistering sounds of washed-out, obscured vocals layered over heavily distorted, swirling guitar lines form the foundation of the genre. Shoegaze has a fascinating 40-year history. Join me on a journey to Scotland in 1984. The Cocteau Twins have just released their third album, Treasure. This album embraces an emerging genre, dream pop. It takes aspects from new wave groups like The Cure, shaping the dark, gloomy lyrics and electronic melodies into atmospheric, airy anthems floating through the Scottish airwaves. The album is a massive success and maintains a spot on the UK charts for several weeks. Fast forward to 1990, when the group releases what many now consider their magnum opus, Heaven or Las Vegas. At this point, dream pop is in full swing. The album is a critical and popular success, and other groups are starting to follow the dream pop wave. In the same period, noise rock is taking off in the United States. American rockers Sonic Youth released a series of hard-hitting projects starting in 1981, redefining rock music. Their harsh, grating sound is embraced, and Sonic Youth experiences a shocking rise to popularity. Their album Daydream Nation, widely considered their best work, gets released in 1988 to widespread acclaim. Another American group, Dinosaur Jr., fully embraces the noise rock trend in the mid-80s and releases two back-to-back noise rock classics, You're Living All Over Me in 1987 and Bug in 1988. In the late 80s, noise rock and dream pop, two very distinct movements on two different continents, are both in full swing. These two movements coalesced into a new, unique sound at a small record label in London, Creation Records. The record label signed what many people consider to be the first true shoegaze band, the Jesus and Mary Chain. In 1985, after releasing several small projects with Creation Records, the Jesus and Mary Chain signed onto a new label under Warner Music Group and released the widely popular Psycho Candy. Thus began Creation Records' reputation for signing bands with this distinct sound, a blend of dream pop and noise rock. Creation Records signed many acts that followed in the footsteps of the Jesus and Mary Chain, most notably My Bloody Valentine. After releasing a couple EPs and their freshman LP, My Bloody Valentine's lead creative, Kevin Shields, was ready to start work on the group's sophomore album, Loveless. When the album was released in 1991, it was a massive critical success, but nowhere near popular enough to recoup its massive production cost. It is rumored that the immense cost and meager returns from this album was one of the main factors that forced the small record label into bankruptcy, which forced the label into a situation where they were bought out by Sony. Loveless was an incredible musical accomplishment. The distorted guitars and muffled vocals came together in a way never before seen or heard. It is easy to lay out the influences and sounds that make up this album, but it is impossible to describe the overall feel and atmosphere that this record creates. Creation Records signed several other groundbreaking groups in the same vein as My Bloody Valentine in the early 90s. One such group was Slowdive, who leaned harder into the dream pop element of shoegaze than noise rock. Their sound defined the softer side of the genre. While this music was emerging from Creation Records, there was still no appropriate genre label for the new style. The cult following of these bands noticed a similarity in the performance styles of many of these groups. Performers would stare down at their pedal boards while performing, as the guitar style of all of these shoegaze groups relied heavily on effects pedals. This melancholy, depressed, downward staring became known as shoegazing, and the genre itself simply picked up the name shoegaze. Shoegaze never hit the mainstream, so its brief heyday in the early 90s was over almost as quickly as it started. However, with the internet bringing about previously unheard of access to music in the 2000s, people rediscovered the rave reviews of classic shoegaze albums, and thus began the shoegaze revival. During the period of 2000 to 2018, there has been an unprecedented amount of output from shoegaze groups. Each group has put its own spin on My Bloody Valentine's classic mix of distorted, swirling guitars and muffled vocals. One such group, Candy Claws, gave the formula a Latin-flavored spin on their album Ceres and Calypso in the Deep Time. The distinct Latin percussion and heavy use of syncopation give the album a feeling of excitement and bliss. Other groups, like Alcest, have run in the complete opposite direction and incorporated elements of black metal into shoegaze. This huge popularity spike has driven many shoegaze artists from the early 90s to come back and make their first records in decades. Among these groups are My Bloody Valentine, Slowdive, and the Jesus and Mary Chain. The history of shoegaze is a long and storied one, but it is far from over. The current musical soundscape of shoegaze has never been broader and more welcoming to new listeners. One day, the warm wall of distortion will envelop us all.